A 30,000-foot ash column above Halmahera Island. Aviation warnings across the western Pacific. Indonesia's geology agency issuing escalation notices. From the outside, it looks like Ibu's worst moment. It is not. On May 16, 2020, Ibu ejected an ash column to 45,000 feet above sea level, nearly the cruising altitude of a commercial aircraft. That blast dwarfed what just happened, and yet the 2020 event came and went. No escalation notice, no evacuation orders, no warnings that something larger was building. So why this eruption? Why now? Because the 30,000-foot column is not the story. The story is what the seismographs recorded in the 72 hours before it, and what they are still recording right now. A surge in deep volcanic earthquakes, harmonic tremors that do not appear in routine activity logs, a lava dome that has physically overflowed the crater walls. The 2020 eruption was bigger, but this one is telling scientists something the 2020 event did not. That the system driving Ibu is no longer behaving the way it has for the past 17 years. What changed? What do the instruments show that the cameras do not? And if the escalation is real, what does a volcano that produces 1,000 eruptions a month look like when it actually lets go? On the eastern edge of Indonesia's North Maluku province, past the Spice Islands and the shipping lanes, and the last commercial flight routes, sits Halmahera, a sprawling, irregularly shaped island that most of the world could not place on a map if their lives depended on it. On its northwestern coast, rising 1,325 meters above the Maluku Sea, is a volcano called Ibu. No famous photographs, no documentary crews, no tourist expeditions posting sunset shots to Instagram. Just a monitoring post staffed by geologists from PVMBG, Indonesia's Center for Volcanology and Geological Hazard Mitigation, logging eruption data around the clock, day after day, year after year. Because Ibu erupts constantly, not occasionally, not seasonally, constantly. In 2023, this volcano produced 21,100 recorded eruptions, the second most active in all of Indonesia, trailing only Mount Semeru. That is 58 eruptions every single day, more than 2 every hour, around the clock, without pause, for an entire year. In January 2025 alone, Ibu erupted 1,079 times, 34 eruptions per day on average, for a single month. And through the first months of 2026, the pace has continued, with 444 eruptions by late March, according to Magma Indonesia. And because of that, because the activity never stopped long enough for the world to take notice, Ibu became invisible, filed under ongoing, routine, background noise. That invisibility is exactly what makes what happened next so dangerous. The seismograph at the GAM IC monitoring post, 9 kilometers from the crater, registered the signal first. Maximum amplitude was 28 millimeters. Duration was 44 seconds. The numbers appeared on the screen the same way they always do, but the column that followed was different. A 30,000-foot tower of ash and gas tore through the summit and kept climbing. Aviation warnings went out across the western Pacific. Flight corridors between Asia and Australia were flagged by Darwin's Volcanic Ash Advisory Center. The ash plume began tracking south and southeast at 15 knots. PVMBG did something they do not do for routine activity. They issued an escalation warning. The column alone was not the trigger. Ibu has produced bigger columns. On May 16, 2020, the summit sent ash to 45,000 feet, higher than any commercial aircraft cruises. The aviation color code went briefly to red. Then, within hours, it was over. There were no evacuation orders, no escalation notice. The volcano returned to its baseline, and the world moved on. What was different this time was the seismic record in the 72 hours before the blast. Deep volcanic earthquakes had accelerated, the kind generated by magma forcing its way through rock toward the surface. Harmonic tremors appeared alongside them, a signal that distinguishes pressurized fluid movement from ordinary seismic noise. And low-frequency earthquakes spiked at rates that PVMBG, Chief Mohammed Wafid later confirmed, represented significantly increased activity. The 30,000-foot column was the result of that sequence, not the start of it. To understand what changed at Ibu, you need to understand what Ibu actually is, and what has been growing inside it since 1998. Ibu is a stratovolcano, a layered structure of hardened lava, ash, and volcanic debris fed by the subduction of the Pacific Plate beneath the North Maluku region. That subduction generates magma that is thick, gas-charged, and explosive when it reaches the surface. The kind that does not flow easily, the kind that piles up. The summit is truncated, no classic peaked cone, but a flattened top containing two nested craters. The inner crater, 1 kilometer across and 400 meters deep, is where the critical action happens. The outer crater, 1.2 kilometers wide, is breached on the northern side, creating a steep-walled valley that channels everything the volcano produces in that direction. Since December 1998, after nearly a century of dormancy following a small explosive event in 1911, a lava dome has been growing inside that inner crater, slowly, continuously, filling it from the inside outward. This is not a minor feature. Research published in the Journal of Volcanology and Geothermal Research established that Ibu's dome has been growing at a rate of approximately 3,182 cubic meters per day. That's more than 1 million cubic meters every year, decade after decade, pressing outward against the crater walls. A lava dome is not a static feature, it's a mechanism. As magma pushes upward through the conduit and extrudes at the surface, it cools and hardens, building the dome from the inside. That dome acts as a keapi, sealing the conduit below it, trapping gas and pressure that cannot escape through the hardened exterior. When the dome is intact, Ibu releases pressure through the sides and margins, the daily ash columns, the small explosions, the 21,100 eruptions a year that the world learned to ignore. That activity is the pressure valve working. But in a special report, PVMBG noted that the lava dome growing in the crater had exceeded the crater wall height. Material is now overflowing the rim and moving down the northern and northwestern flanks as lava avalanches. The dome is no longer contained by the structure around it. That changes the physics of what comes next. PVMBG monitors Ibu through a network of seismographs, GPS deformation sensors, and gas emission instruments, cross-referenced against satellite thermal data from the Himawari 9 constellation and ash tracking from Darwin's Volcanic Ash Advisory Center. In routine activity, the seismic signature is repetitive and shallow, the mechanical signature of small explosions venting through the conduit. What the pre-blast data showed was fundamentally different. Deep volcanic earthquakes indicate magma movement through the lower plumbing system. Harmonic. Tremors indicate pressurized fluid, magma or gas, oscillating through narrow conduits under sustained force. Neither of those signals is produced by routine surface venting. Together, they indicate something moving upward from depth, something that had not reached the surface yet when the instruments first detected it. The 30,000-foot ash column was that something reaching the surface. This is not the first time Ibu has forced scientists to stop treating it as routine. In April 2024, something shifted in the instrument readings. Deep volcanic earthquakes increased. Magma began migrating to shallower positions beneath the edifice. By May 8th, PVMBG raised the alert from level 2 to level 3. 8 days later, on May 16th, the alert went to level 4. the maximum on Indonesia's 4-tier scale. 7 villages were evacuated. Ibu had been producing ash columns up to 5,000 meters above the summit every single day. Incandescent lava ejection was reaching 1.5 kilometers from the crater rim. The roaring and banging noises from the eruptions were audible at the observation post, 9 kilometers away. By the end of the escalation, more than 400 people had fled to emergency shelters. The world briefly noticed. Then the alert level was lowered, and Ibu returned to its background noise. January 2025. The sequence repeated. On January 11th, Ibu produced lava fountains reaching hundreds of meters above the summit, accompanied by volcanic lightning. The electrical discharge generated when charged ash and rock fragments collide inside the eruption column. The ash plume reached 4 kilometers above the summit. By January 15th, the alert was at level 4 again. A pyroclastic flow, a fast-moving surge of superheated gas and fragmented rock, had traveled 500 meters north of the crater. 3,000 residents from 6 villages received evacuation orders. BNPB, Indonesia's National Disaster Management Agency, had coordinated the evacuation of more than 500 people, with thousands more in higher-risk locations. Farmers harvesting nutmeg were allowed to return to their gardens during daytime hours only. In January 2025 alone, Ibu produced 1,079 eruptions. Over the course of that month, it erupted more than 34 times a day on average. The volcano erupted 17 times in a single day. And then, again, the world moved on. What the 2024 and 2025 escalations have in common is the sequence. Deep seismicity first, then dome overflows, then alert escalation, then the largest single eruption in the cycle. That sequence is precisely what the instruments recorded before the latest 30,000-foot blast. Not a new pattern. The same pattern, repeating, accelerating, and each time it repeats, the baseline from which it starts is higher than the time before. Ibu's dome has been growing since 1998. For 27 years it has been filling the crater, pressing against the walls, expanding outward, growing. The northern breach in the outer crater wall directs everything the dome produces in one direction, down toward the valley and the communities below. Direction. Now imagine the dome does not vent through the top. Imagine the structure holding the pressure fails on one side. Fails. It begins with a swarm. Dozens of small earthquakes in under an hour, each one fractionally repositioning the dome's internal structure. The seismograph amplitude rises. Then a deep, low-frequency pulse, the sound of a large section losing cohesion. Swarm. The northern flank of the dome detaches. Detaches. The decompression is instantaneous. Gas and fragmented magma that had been held under the dome surface accelerate outward at hundreds of meters per second. The blast is directed down the breached northern wall, the only open direction the structure has. Instantaneous. Block and ash flows, superheated avalanches of volcanic debris moving faster than a highway vehicle, race down the northern valley. Within 3 minutes, they reach 4 kilometers from the crater. The monitoring post at Gam IC, 9 kilometers out, begins recording ash impact on its instruments. Superheated, villages within the 2-kilometer exclusion zone are already gone. Gone. At 5 kilometers, the primary flow slows. But the ash surge, the dilute superheated gas cloud that separates from the main flow, continues outward. It is invisible until it arrives. At the temperatures it carries, it is unsurvivable in the open. The ash column from a full dome failure does not stay at 30,000 feet. Under sustained decompression, it reaches stratospheric altitudes, the level at which particles remain suspended for weeks rather than hours. Darwin Volcanic Ash Advisory Center issues closure advisories for the eastern Indonesia corridor. Flights between Darwin and Manado are suspended. The ash cloud moves northwest, then west, tracking the prevailing seasonal pattern toward the Maluku Sea and the densely populated islands beyond. Suspended. In North Maluku's provincial capital, Ternate, 150 kilometers southwest, ash begins settling on rooftops by the following morning. Schools close. Water treatment systems clog with fine particulate. Surgical mask supplies in local pharmacies are exhausted within hours. Ash, Indonesia responds. The National Disaster Agency BNPB deploys, but Halmahera's road network is limited. The communities closest to the collapse are the last ones reached. Last. Here is what most coverage of Ibu gets wrong. The eruptions get reported, the ash columns get measured, the evacuations get photographed, and then the story ends, because the alert level drops and the daily explosions return to the frequency the world has decided is acceptable. Nobody talks about the dome. The lava dome inside Ibu's inner crater has been the controlling mechanism of this volcano's behavior since 1998. It determines what pressure can escape, how much, and in which direction, as long as it sits within the crater walls. The explosions it generates are constrained by the crater structure around it. But the dome has now grown past the crater walls. Material is overflowing the rim and moving down the northern and northwestern flanks as lava avalanches. That matters because an overflowing dome is an unstable dome. It is no longer balanced within the structure that constrains it. Its mass is unevenly distributed. Its outer surface is exposed to gravity, without the support of the crater walls. And every eruption, every one of the hundreds of events recorded in 2026 alone, is putting additional stress on a structure that is already extending past its design boundaries. There is a second problem that amplifies the first. Ibu's outer crater is breached to the north. That breach is not just a topographic feature, it is the primary direction in which the dome's instability would propagate in a failure event. The steep-walled valley created by that breach channels debris flow directly toward the communities and agricultural land that surround the northern and northwestern base of the volcano. The dome is overflowing in the same direction the breach points. PVMBG knows this. The sectoral exclusion zone extending toward the northern crater opening is an acknowledgement of this specific geometry. During the January 2025 escalation, the exclusion was 5 kilometers from the crater and 6 kilometers from the northern wall opening. It is not the standard radial exclusion. It is targeted precisely at the direction the dome is currently moving. The question is whether that zone is enough, and whether the people inside it know what the zone is actually protecting against. PVMBG runs one of the most extensive volcanic monitoring networks in the world. Indonesia's magma platform publishes real-time eruption data. Darwin 5. AAC tracks ash dispersal across the Western Pacific. The instruments at GAM-IC are recording every tremor, every explosion, every thermal anomaly in the dome. None of that changes the arithmetic on the ground. The villages closest to Ibu's northern breach sit within 2 to 3 kilometers of the active crater. The closest village, Sangaji Nyeku, is just 3 kilometers from the summit. PVMBG's exclusion zone places them inside the no-go radius during level 4 alerts. Most were told to evacuate during the escalations of 2024 and 2025. Most returned when the alert dropped, at the flow velocities recorded in comparable dome collapse events, block and ash flows moving at 100 to 200 meters per second. The time between a dome failure and a flow reaching 2 kilometers is measured in seconds, not minutes. No early warning system operates at that speed. The deeper issue is what 17 years of continuous eruption does to a community's relationship with the threat. When a volcano erupts 58 times a day, every day for years, the eruptions stop feeling like eruptions. They become weather. They become the sound the mountain makes. Residents who lived through 2 level 4 alerts and 2 subsequent reductions in alert status have their own evidence. that the mountain escalates and then calms, that evacuation orders come and then go. Many refused to evacuate during the January 2025 escalation, arguing they were used to the situation and were in harvest season. Local authorities managed to evacuate only 517 of the 3,000 residents initially ordered to leave. Officials pledged to continue to educate the community and encourage them to evacuate. That experience is accurate for everything Ibu has done so far. It is not a reliable model for what a dome failure looks like. Halmahera's road network is limited by the island's geography. Evacuation routes from the communities in Ibu's monitoring zone are single direction, away from the northern breach, along roads that would be affected by significant ashfall, within minutes of a major eruption. The evacuation shelters prepared during 2024 and 2025 Level 4 alerts are the same ones that would be used again. They exist and they are documented. But they require the population to be moving before the event that triggers the need for them. That window, the gap between the instrument detecting the precursor signal and the community receiving and acting on it, is the single most critical variable in what happens next at Ibu. And every day, the alert sits at level 2, while the dome continues to overflow. That window is being tested. Here's what the data tells us, without ambiguity. Ibu's lava dome has been growing since 1998. It has now overflowed the crater walls. The northern breach in the outer crater provides a direct path for dome material and dome failure debris to reach the communities below. In the weeks before the 30,000-foot blast, the seismic record showed deep volcanic earthquakes and harmonic tremors, indicating magma movement from depth. Those signals are not present in routine daily eruption data. They appeared, and the blast followed. PVMBG issued an escalation warning. The dome is still there. The magma supply driving it has not stopped. The alert has returned to level 2. What the instruments cannot tell anyone is timing. They cannot say whether the pre-blast seismic sequence was the full expression of the current magma pulse, or the opening movement of a longer acceleration. They cannot say whether the dome will continue overflowing its current trajectory, or whether a new, deep intrusion will alter the failure geometry. They cannot say whether the next level 4 alert will be triggered by the same sequence that produced the last two, or by something that moves faster than that sequence allowed for. The 2020 column was bigger and produced no escalation. The 2025 blast was smaller and produced evacuations. The difference was what was happening beneath the surface, not what was visible above it. Ibu's danger has never been what you can see. It has always been what the instruments are detecting before you see anything at all. If the dome continues overflowing past the crater walls, at what point does its own weight become the trigger, rather than the next magma pulse? And for the families living within 2 kilometers of that northern breach, those who have gone home twice after alerts dropped, what would it actually take for a warning to reach them in time? Ibu has been erupting since 2008. It will still be erupting tomorrow. The question has never been whether it erupts. It is whether the eruption that finally changes everything looks different enough from the ones before it to be recognized in time. This is Earth Attacks. If you want to understand what is building before it breaks, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next chapter will not wait.